Hello, my name is Jake Johnson, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Journal of the American Musicological Society. And I'm excited to welcome you to a new initiative, which is the JAMS Author Interview Series. Today, I am joined by Alejandro Madrid, who is the Walter W. Naumburg Professor of Music at Harvard University, to discuss his article, Listening Through the Colonial Noise: Things, Sound Objects, and Legacy at the Berliner Phonogram Archives Konrad T. Preuss collection, which you can find in the spring 2025 issue of the Journal of the American Musicological Society. That's volume 78, issue 1. Welcome, Alejandro. Really happy to have you here with us today. I'm wondering if we could begin with you just giving a brief summary of the topic of your article and the argument that you develop.
Thanks, Jake, for the invitation. It's very exciting to be here. So the goal of the article is basically the article is an exploration of a sound archive that came together as part of the Prussian Empire building project at the end of the 19th century and at the beginning of the 20th century. And here I focus on a very particular collection of Nigerian Wixárika ritual chants from Mexico's western Sierra Madre, recorded by Konrad Theodor Preuss. He actually recorded the cylinders for the Royal Ethnology Museum originally, but all those cylinders ended up as a collection in the Berlin Phonogram Archive, and now they are housed by the Humboldt Forum. So there's been a long sort of history of how the collection has morphed and changed institutional affiliations. So what I do with this this exploration is basically threefold. I first take the Preuss expedition and I look into it as an extractivist endeavor, focusing on how the recording process was an act that arguably made something that was a performance, something that was a ritual, into objects, but also how that act also transformed those chants into something they were not, and basically making something different from what the communities actually, how the communities understood these chants. So that's the first exploration, the expedition itself. The second one is an exploration of the collection as part of the Berlin Phonogram Archive and this history of the archive. It was I would say, some sort of like a silent history, because the archive was taken by the Soviet Union after World War II, and it went through a process of repatriations and first to the DDR, and finally, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, to its proper place, the phonogram archive. So only in the 1990s it went back to the phonogram archive. So I'm interested in that sort of how that moment characterized the collection itself, and also allow for certain ways of engaging it, especially by scholars who were not from Germany. And that's what the third part of the exploration is, which is how Mexican scholars have actually engaged this collection, especially anthropologist Margarita Valdovinos, and how this interaction has, in a way, put in evidence the patrimonial character of the archive, and how it is being, that the archive was considered to be national German patrimony, but also how the holdings of those sounds that are actually in the collections actually do not belong to Germany. So this tension between patrimony and what the archives are. No? So, and my argument is that Valdovinos' repatriation process is in a way a model to not only make the archive sound again, but also to make it say something different from what it was designed to say.
Yeah, wonderful. There's so many fascinating inroads within this piece. And one thing that may be surprising to many readers is the turning and reframing of the archive as not a passive receptacle, but one that's active. And it's not a neutral space, but one that's informing how we, in fact, receive knowledge and wisdom. So I'm wondering if you could tell maybe what most fascinated you about the article's topic and this area of research?
I think one of the things that was most fascinating when I was working in the archive was actually listening to the voice of Preuss in the archive. Because what he did with each of the recordings is that he actually introduces the recording, um, and he gives it a name, no? And that's what I think is really interesting because you hear his voice in the archive, and the voice itself is telling you that there's a mediation, that the recording is not something transparent, but it's something that is being constructed, and you are hearing the actual the person that is actually mediating this whole thing. No, but the other thing that I find really interesting is that uh, his voice and his naming the chant actually, in a way, creates the chant itself. It gives it an ontology that is completely different, again, from what the communities understood these chants to be. So in a way, it makes the voice and his interpellation of the chant actually makes it into the archival object that he wants it to be for his own purposes. So I found that really, really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit about how your article extends existing knowledge in, say, musicology, or maybe a subfield or two, or other kinds of discussions about music?
Yeah. The article sort of enters into a discussion about the relevance of archives today, but also a critique of the authority of the archive. So in that sense, it's part of a larger conversation. It's not only in musicology, not only in sound studies, but in history and anthropology. So it's a larger intellectual conversation. I think it provides specific evidence about how can we go about sound and listening as a part of uh, um, developing a new type of knowledge, no, that bypasses the written word, and what the shortcomings of that may be. No, so I try to explore those two things in this project. Not only the potential of listening and sound to create a new type of epistemology, but also the problems that may come with that. No, and as this is part of a larger project. This article is part of a larger project, a book about sound archives, in which I take different case studies to explore basically that question. You have archives that are designed with a given structure, and that structure sort of maps out how you not only how the sounds are stored in the archive, but also how you retrieve them and what kind of information you can retrieve. No? It's all part of the structure and the design of the archive. And what I want to do with this project is how can we actually ask archives questions that would allow them to say something different from what they were designed to say.
Yeah, what a great question. What a fascinating book project. I'll look forward to seeing that. So, one last question for you, Alejandro, which is to think of maybe if there was somebody who was new to musicology or maybe a student, and you had one takeaway that you hoped they would receive from reading your article, what might that be?
So I would say that although archives do not include everything, they often include more than they claim to store. And I think this is something interesting for people who are new to musicology to start thinking about. Not that these sources of truth that we're you know taught to trust. Um, yeah, I mean that they have more. That they often have more than what we think they may have. So we must learn not only to uh, to to come up with ways of looking at at those clues of the what is being left out of the archive, what is not in the archive, but also what the archive's design and structure sort of have rendered invisible or inaudible. No, so I would say that, no, and hopefully this article will be a way to uh, to let new students know that there's a possibility of listening to the flip side of the archive.
The flip side. I love that. Thank you so much, Alejandro, for spending some time with us talking about your fabulous and fascinating article that's coming out. in the most recent spring 2025 issue of the Journal of the American Musicological Society. You can find Alejandro's essay along with many other fascinating essays and reviews in that same issue. That's volume 78, issue 1, which is available through the University of California Press. Thank you again, Alejandro.
Thank you, Jake.